Welcome to an incomplete guide to world domination, a podcast by creators for creators, because together we can take over the world. I am your host, Brianna Toiber. It's been a hectic week. How have you been?
It's also been crazy. We just captured a bunch of kittens that had been living in our backyard, and so now we're like trying to keep them safe and find a place for them to live and get them fixed and all that. So we got a bunch of kittens, and it's been kind of crazy.
I mean, there are worse problems to have.
Yeah, yeah, they're pretty great, but they're also very scared right now.
I can imagine. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, my name's Ian. I'm an organizer at the Society of Play. Um, I don't know. What do you want to know?
You mentioned that you recently got into professional gaming, competitive gaming, right?
Yeah. I'm not pro yet. I don't know if I will be pro, but I recently decided to make my main hobby thing competitive fighting games. It's something I've done for a really long time, but not like taking it that seriously. I'm kind of a serial hobbyist, so I've done a lot of things, and usually I like dip my toe in for a while and then move on to the next thing. And recently, I decided I wanted to really just kind of deep dive and see how far this goes.
So, what are some of the other things you've done? I'm curious.
Oh man, there's so many things. Let's see, music, tabletop games, role playing games. I did game development, and that turned into my career. Electronics, sword fighting for a while. I've done a lot of stuff. That's just art, you know. I'm sure there's more, but yeah, I, I've done a lot of stuff.
So, what are some of the games you've worked on?
Like video games?
How did you get sucked down that particular rabbit hole?
Well, I've always kind of wanted to make video games, and like ever since I was young, but I always got told like, "Oh, you got to be good at math for that," and so I wasn't really good at math, so I kind of never pursued it. I went to college for a little bit and didn't know what I wanted to do, so I ended up dropping out. And then, like in my early 20s, I just like I saw a lot of it was kind of the big first wave indie boom where like Meat Boy and stuff were coming out, and it seemed like indie games were really starting to take off. And I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna try doing this, and so I just started and taught myself, and I did it for a while, and then joined up with the Society of Play, and that kind of just ended up turning into my career.
I love Dallas Society of Play.
Yeah, it's a cool spot.
Some interesting people there, but there's some really cool people. So you said that's become your career. Is there a particular company you work for? Did you make your own company?
Yeah, no, I work for this company called From the Future. We do a bunch of VR work.
Ooh, that's fun.
Our biggest game that we made is called Hop Along the Badlands, and it's out on Steam and PSVR and Oculus. But lately, we've kind of gotten out of the video game production because it's really hard to make money doing that. So we're doing a lot of more. We're still doing VR work and like still using Unity and using all our game development skills, but we're doing a lot more education kind of stuff.
I've I've noticed that there's been a definite increase in the use of VR for educational purposes as well as AR.
Yeah, it's kind of blowing up right now, and so we're trying to capitalize on that.
What made you decide to pick competitive gaming of all the other things that you've done? What made you decide to pick and stick with that one?
So it's something like when I was in high school, I kind of got into the fighting game community with some friends, and they kind of brought me on, and I learned to play with like some world champ players. And so I was in this really cool community back then, back in like 2006, and I did that for a while, but I never took it seriously enough to not be a scrub. And scrub's kind of a fighting game community term of someone that's just kind of like,
Probably still better than I am.
yeah, it's not necessarily someone that's bad. It's someone that wants to win, but they're being held back by some kind of mental thing. So it could be if they don't want to really sit around in practice mode and like try to learn the game, or if they're just thinking about the game wrong, or if they're not playing to their full potential because of some mental hang up they have. Like if you're not playing to win and focused on getting better, then you're probably a scrub. And you see that a lot in the community. So like I did that for a few years. I was kind of scrubby, but I enjoyed the community. And then you leave high school and kind of enter a next phase of life, and I kind of dropped off from the community for a long time. Earlier this year, some games were coming out that I was really interested in, and I started looking around for local scenes, and I ended up finding some tournaments to start going to regularly. And I thought this is really cool, but I can't like just show up to tournaments and expect to start doing well.
You got to get the practice in.
Yeah, and so I just kind of got into the communities and really kind of remembered what it is I loved about fighting games, and ever since I've been taking it real seriously and trying to practice every day and get better.
Not gonna lie, the fighting game community is not one that I'm personally particularly familiar with. I know it is exploding a lot, especially with the advent and perpetual growth of esports.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's been blowing up all over the place, but what's it like being inside of that community? Both as like someone that's like a hobbyist looking to become more, and well, I guess you haven't quite gotten to the professional part yet, but you probably know some about what it might be like to do it professionally.
Yeah, so the thing I really like, the thing I like most about the fighting game community is that fighting games are very much results based. Like you win or you don't. So like there's a very strong focus on just self development, because if you're not trying to get better, you're probably a scrub. People are really focused on bettering themselves. Like that's kind of the vibe of the scene. And so like it's kind of weird. Like for a game that's not about a team sport at all, like unlike a lot of esports where like Overwatch or whatever, where you're playing on a team of people that you gotta rely on. Fighting games are very one-on-one. They're very individualistic, but I see a lot of camaraderie like in the scene, like because in order to get better, you have to play people that are better than you. That's just the rule. And so there's a lot of like sharing of information, a lot of people just trying to put in the work and like get better. So it's a really cool scene in that way.
What's it been like getting back into that for you?
I mean, the grind is tough. Like you gotta go out there and have kind of a tough skin, because when you start off, it's just like every week you go to a tournament and you come last. That's just how it's gonna go for a while. So there have been times where I'm like, oh, I don't know, do I really want to keep doing this? Like, but every time I sit on it and I rethink kind of my mental stance on it, and end up coming back better, because I've realized that there's this, you got to think about why you're losing and where your progress is at. But overall, it's been really great. And to be honest, like in the last 6 months or so of getting into this community, I've made more friends than I have in like the past several years.
Guess that kind of makes sense because it's like what I experienced in a marching band. You're with a group of people working your butt off day in and day out, and it's usually going to be like the same people, and you're all driven towards the same thing, and everyone else around you thinks you're nuts.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. It's I imagine it's a lot like that.
Have you had any interesting reactions from friends and family now that you've started digging into this?
I think people just kind of get it, like especially when people that know me and know how much of a serial hobbyist I am. Like, I've had people say, "Oh, it's kind of of a shame that you're kind of giving up on all this stuff you used to do," but like it makes sense, because a lot of times, like I've always had this kind of guilt and anxiety looking at all these old past unfinished projects and like all the supplies for all the hobbies that I've had kind of just piling up. But it feels different now that I'm like, okay, I'm gonna make this my thing, and that's okay. And so it's kind of alleviated a lot of that guilt I had. Like I can just kind of relax in knowing that I don't have time to do everything, and I don't need to feel bad about the things that I can't get to.
I kind of get that because I've tried a bunch of different things. I tried Twitch streaming to kind of success. I had like a couple people watching me. I tried YouTube, gave up on that very quickly because that's a lot of content and a bit of a mess. So I was like, okay, maybe not.
Yeah.
But it's just sometimes you just have to try a bunch of things to see how you like them. But then when you find something that just fits, you gotta stick with it, and you gotta keep doing it. Because if you stop doing it, you're not gonna
Yeah.
start again.
Yep. Yeah, I do always kinda look back on the time between when I started and that long gap where I didn't really do any of it in fighting games, and it's like, "Oh, man, I could have been so much better if I just stuck with it."
Mhm. It's hard when there's so many shiny things out there to try, and it's just you feel like if it doesn't immediately take off, you're like, "Okay, maybe this isn't it, maybe something else will be," but that's not how it works.
Yeah. Maybe for me, it's just a part of getting older is, like, I'm more aware of the amount of time I don't have. But on the flip side of that, like, I am getting older, so, like, I'm gonna have to try extra hard at fighting games because esports are kinda a young person's game.
There's a reason the entirety of me playing Overwatch is playing with friends who are better than I am, because that way they cover up how bad I am. But that also means the enemies are like our opponents are like in the triple digit level, and I'm like, hey, I made it to level 9.
Yeah, it's important to
Yeah.
pick up on your little achievements there, especially when you're playing with people better than you are. Like, I'm still on the low end of things at the tournaments, but, like, I can judge my progress by saying, like, "Okay, I still ranked at the same point at this tournament, but now every match I've played is really close, so maybe next time, I actually have a shot at winning these."
What does your normal sort of day or week look like trying to build this back up and get back into this?
Yeah, so there's, 2 local tournaments I go to a week. There's a lot more I could be going to, but I'm not worrying about that yet because these,
Two weeks sounds good for.
yeah, and it's for 2 different games. So I go to a Smash tournament and I go to a Tekken tournament. And then during the week, like, I try to grind a bit on the main game I'm working on, which currently is Tekken. So, like, I try to practice that every day. And then in between
Mhm.
that, like, I just play other games with the community because I've also found a lot of camaraderie on Discord, like with a specific Discord server I'm in. So like I try to
Mhm.
get in games with all these people that I'm making friends with. The nice thing about fighting games is it's easy to play multiple fighting games because each game teaches you something different about fighting games. Like one game might focus more on defense and one game might focus more on like spacing and one game might focus more on like being really aggressive. And even though like mechanically they're all different, not all the skills cross over, it kind of like makes you better at fighting games in general, just like getting your head in that space.
Yeah. What have some of your challenges been?
I guess like the two big ones are like mental and physical challenges. The physical challenges is that I get hand issues just because I'm getting older and I've worked manual labor that's given me a lot of repetitive motion injuries. So like I got to be really careful or I will mess up my hands. Like currently I'm wearing thumb splints because I've just been practicing too hard. So that stinks, but I mean there's players that get around that. So, there's players that can't use an arm and they still play at high level. So it's not an excuse. I just need to be careful.
And I think there's stuff you can buy and like things you can wear that will help with that.
Oh yeah.
Facebook has nonstop been giving me these ads for stuff that's supposed to help with like tendonitis and
Yeah,
stuff.
I have compression gloves that I wear all the time and I know all the tricks.
I've been thinking about getting some because I write a lot. I'm on the computer a lot, and I also played clarinet for 12 years. When the entirety of your instrument rests
Yep.
on one thumb, that gives you some wrist issues.
Yep. Yep. I know how that goes. Really the only thing to do is just take breaks before it starts hurting.
Yeah,
But
and when you can't take breaks, have a brace.
yeah. That part aside, like a lot of times the real challenge is just like Sometimes it's a slog. Sometimes you get on a real losing streak and you just like lose all your motivation and you think, what am I even doing here? Yeah, it can be hard to bounce back from, but you just the key thing with competitive games is that you can't blame anyone but yourself, and that it's a hard pill to swallow, but like it helps you progress. Like that's kind of a key tenet of the scrub is when you if you blame someone else, you're not going to improve because you're not admitting that like you just lost. And the
Mm.
way I see it, like fighting games, there's not anything random. Like if you lose, it's because it's your fault. Like it's because you didn't stop the other person from beating you. And so you just gotta like sometimes you gotta take breaks and sometimes you gotta like chill out because it's really easy to get turned up like in a match. It gets pretty heated. I found that I actually get way more like shaky and adrenaline and anxiety when I'm playing strangers online. For some reason, that just gets me really like it gets my heart racing in like an unpleasant way. But like if I'm playing someone I know online, it's fine. If I'm playing someone in person, even in a tournament, like I'm cool as a cucumber.
I think it's a psychological thing. Like, there's also a reason why, I love people, how a lot of people like pace when they're talking on the phone.
Yeah. Oh, I hate talking on the phone. It drives me nuts.
It's because your brain's not getting any of the social cues it's used to
Yeah.
getting. It can't read the body language.
Yeah, I think
So
that's
your
exactly
brain
it.
doesn't like that. And I was talking to a friend about it. She's like, but texting is fine. I'm like, yeah, because your brain doesn't get
Yeah.
those same social cues from reading stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
Talking on the phone eventually gets slightly less awkward. But then again, yeah, working in retail, you get used to answering the strangers' phone calls.
Yeah. One really interesting thing about fighting games is like when you play against someone, you really get a sense of like who they are as a person. Like it's kind of surprising, but there's a lot of expression that goes into the way you play. And like I've heard fighting games at a competitive level be compared to like having a debate because it's a lot of back and forth. And instead of using words, you're saying like, "Oh, do you know how to deal with this attack I'm throwing at you? How about this one?" And so you can kind of tell a lot about someone from playing them at a game. And I think that might be why it's so easy to make friends in the fighting game community because like you kind of skip all the all the stuff like you get right to the point of like getting to know someone when you play them.
You skip all the awkward small talk because you're too busy smack talking them, and then afterwards, it's like, you know what? You're cool. I like you.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And then like I've on the flip side, I've played against people at tournaments that were just like kind of cruddy the whole time and complaining and like they seemed like they were mad that I was beating them and they're blaming my character. And I'm like, okay, this person's a scrub. Like it's good to know. I'm not gonna talk to this person anymore.
It's always interesting in situations like that when it's just like, I feel like that happens no matter what you're doing. You'll be talking to some people and they get it, and you'll be talking to some people and like 5 minutes in, you're like, yeah, this is a nope.
Yeah, I get your deal and I don't like it. I'm out.
It's like, I see what kind of person you are. I see how you're going about this. You're one of those people that, because like, whenever you're doing something like this, you're just like, doing anything competitive or anything different. Like, you have to take responsibility.
Yeah,
Like, it's okay to get frustrated, it's okay to get upset, it's okay to be off your game for a little while, but you gotta get together and you gotta keep going,
yeah.
and you have to accept the fact that it's on you.
Yep, I think it's one of the cool things about the community is that there's just a lot of responsibility and accountability, and like also any beef gets solved by a game. Like I've definitely had some grudge matches where it's like you're upset with somebody and you get in and like it kind of doesn't.
Wipe the floor with them.
Well, even it kind of doesn't matter who wins. It's like okay, you fight it out and it's kind of over. I don't know how that exactly works, but that's the way it seems to go. Like whether it's a close match or somebody just completely wins, it's like okay, well, we're done with that. It's kind of like resolved.
Guess it's just because it's like you're getting all of that, like, anger and frustration and stuff out.
Yeah.
I sometimes joke about whenever I'm playing, like, whenever I go to play a video game, just like kick back and relax a bit. I'm currently playing through Dragon Age 2, and one of the things I like, there's just something really satisfying about the combat style for, like, if you're playing as a rogue. So I often describe it as I'm going to go stab my way through other people's problems.
Yep.
Because it's just sometimes it's fun to do that, and it's at a place where there's no consequences and it's not real.
Yep.
Because where else do you get to take a flying leap with someone and stab two daggers into them and then just keep slashing it while your friend shoots fireballs from the other side?
Yep.
It's a bit escapist. It's like a moral sandbox, place where you can go and work through everything you're dealing with in a place where it's nothing actually matters. But in a way, that matters a lot.
Yeah. One thing I do kind of miss since I've been on the grind is like playing other games. I kind of don't have a lot of time for that.
Oh, that's tragic.
I have time for basically one game that's not a fighting game, and for the past like year, that's been Persona 5, and I'm only like halfway through. So it's gonna be a while
Ooh.
before I get to play anything else.
I get that when you don't have a lot of time to play some of those games, especially the ones that take forever to get
Yeah,
through.
I'm 80 hours in, and I'm halfway through.
I've never played any of the Persona games. I've heard good things about it. Might
Yep.
eventually one day when I'm not busy replaying the exact same three games over and over and over again.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason I'm sticking in through it, but I also kind of just want it to be over because there's like all these cool games coming out that I just absolutely do not have time for.
Or all these games already out where you're like, I don't have time for,
Yep.
and also money.
Yep. Well, the nice thing about like sticking to a handful of games is that you don't spend a lot of money on games. So like when something comes out you really want, it's like okay, I can splurge on this.
That is true. Also, with these competitions, like, have you won any money from it yet?
No, I've spent a lot of money because you always got to pay to get in because it's a prize pool, so everybody pays, and then the top, you know, however many players get a cut. So I mean, it's like $5, but yeah, I haven't won yet. I'm still on the lower ends of it, but hopefully I'm getting getting those getting closer.
Yeah, how much farther do you have to go to get there?
I don't know. Uh, so one thing about the way tournaments work, especially like local recurring tournaments, is you have everybody has what they call a seed, which is it determines where they get put in the bracket.
Hmm?
And so the reason they do this is because they don't want the two best players like taking each other out in the first round. They want the two best players to meet at the very end of like winners brackets.
Yeah.
So what that means for a new player is the highest seed fights the lowest seed. And so as a new player that's like just getting into it, your first round is against the best player there.
Oh boy.
And then your first round in the losers bracket is probably against the second best or like, you know, another high level player. Uh so like it's kind of hard to say exactly where I am because I'm getting close to beating like I'm not the lowest seed anymore just because other people have came and I've surpassed it, like one or two people. But you know, I it's kind of hard to gauge progress. In Tekken, I'm a lot further back because Tekken is a insane game for crazy people. There's a lot. I'll just say there's a lot to learn. Like nobody ever knows enough about it. It's just a very knowledge based game. So like you're always learning.
How did you pick which games you were gonna go with?
Mainly, I picked them based on what the scene was around here. Like when I started looking for FGC events here, I really wanted to play Mortal Kombat, but there really wasn't a place that really ran it here. But there was a play. There was lots of Smash tournaments, and there's like a traditional fighters tournament that plays a handful of different games, but they play Tekken every week.
Hmm?
Um, and so I just kind of got on Tekken and kind of fell in love with it. And same with Smash is like it's not something I really considered playing competitively that much before, but once I found the scene, I'm like, okay, this is a cool scene. Like I'll pick up this game to play with these guys.
I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I could, find the hyper-specific game that only I wanna play, but if there's nobody local to play with, it's not a lot of fun.
Slightly less entertaining to play, competitive games by yourself.
As good as netcode is for online play for fighting games, it's not quite at the point where it's, like, sitting next to someone, and even if it was, like, you don't get the face-to-face that you get, with a local scene. And also the big part about a local scene is like you get friendly matches. So even if you go every week and pay your $5 to get in two matches because you lose immediately, you can still sit down with good players and just grind it out with them, and people will give you advice and like tell you what you did wrong.
I like that. It's nice.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Imagine it also makes it a lot less boring slash depressing
Yep.
because if you went and got beaten almost immediately, then what do you do for the rest of the time?
You say goodbye to your $5 and go home. Yeah, so I don't know if I'm ever gonna get to
Yeah.
like a pro level. I probably won't, but like I want to keep improving and just see how far it goes. Like the plan is to just get as good as I get and not stop trying to get good. I guess my goal would be to start traveling to like major tournaments. I don't need to win those, but like if I can go out to Evo and like even if I don't get out of pools, that'd be really
Oh,
cool.
that'd be fun.
I just want to get good enough that I can justify spending the cost to like travel somewhere to play.
And I can imagine you meet some very cool people there too.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Is there any piece of advice you'd like to give people who are either looking to get into competitive fighting games or serial hobbyists looking to decide what their thing is?
Yeah. Okay. So the hobby thing, it's just like you only have so much time. Not even I'm not even talking about like in your life. It's just like you only got so much time a week and in a day. So you kind of have to pick something, and it's fun to do a bit of everything, but like it's ultimately I in my experience it's not as satisfying as like really diving deep and seeing how good you can get with something.
Mhm.
But it is nice to practice getting good at a lot of things. Like I think that's why I was a serial hobbyist for so long. It's just like I enjoyed the process of like
Picking up different skills.
yeah, I enjoy the process of getting good at things, but I never followed it to its conclusion. Like I dipped in and then saw something else that I got obsessed with and like swapped to that.
Like, let's try this. Oh, hey, look, something shiny. Oh, look, something shinier. Oh, look, this thing blinks.
My last thing I wanted to say about fighting games is just like well for people trying to get in is that it can be pretty tough to get in. Like you got to learn a lot mentally, just like how the games work. But there's also like physical demands of like being able to do inputs, and I think like the key things are you got to find a community. That's the most important. You have to understand that you're gonna lose a lot before you get better, and you just gotta come to love practice. Like practicing and like thinking about how you're playing the game is really important. But I don't think
Mhm.
you have to go all in to like play at a competent level and enjoy it. Like it seems harder to get into than it is, and games are getting a lot better about teaching people to play at a like competitive level. And when I say competitive, I mean like at a level where you understand what's going on in the game and you're not just playing the buttons, like you're playing within the rules of a game, like you're able to understand the mind games that go into it.
Playing strategically as opposed to just button mashing to see what happens.
Yeah.
Anything else you can think of you want to talk about?
Yeah, I think that's all I got.
All right. Well, yeah, thanks for coming on. This is fun. I got to learn a lot about a world that I'm not familiar with. And yeah, I definitely wish you luck in the future with some of that.
Yeah, thanks.
An Incomplete Guide to World Domination is written, directed, and produced by Brianna Toiber as part of Pseudonym Social, a creative podcast network. Music is by Patrick Chester of Chester Studios. You can find out more of his work at chesterstudios.com. For more information on the other shows produced by Pseudonym Social, please check out our website at pseudonymsocial.wordpress.com. If you would like to help support our show, you can find us at patreon.com/an incomplete guide to world domination.